ended up in California. I understand you were also in New York.
Yeah, so I'm Maryan Haider. I'm architect, Syrian, Circassian, several backgrounds and cultures. I moved to USA 2000, end of 12, 13, beginning of 13. I started my career like in US in New York City. I worked for an architecture company for 8 years, same company. I started like junior drafter, architect, but then project manager. During that time also I was taking care of accessibility because, you know, like the juniors start to draft like the non-necessary stuff, bathrooms and kitchens, and that has a lot of accessibility requirements. So I started to get into this, and then they have something like affordable housing for low-income people. They require more accessibility because like they have like ADA rules comes into place, so I had to study that. So I started to understand the concept of accessibility, and I fell in love with that. Then 2.5 years ago, I decided to move to California because I don't like snow. I don't like cold weather, so I'm like, let me do a move. And then I was like, maybe I can do like accessibility only thing. And I just researched, and then I found like, oh, accessibility consultant, they need that position. And I'm like, okay. So I applied, they contacted me, and I moved to Marks Akubo, which is I'm working for right now. It's a US-based company, nationwide. It's a big company, consulting in general, but we have a specified group for accessibility only. So we have fire life safety, we have like building enclosure, we have also client representations, like a lot of like real estate transactions, but we are only, our group is only accessibility. So I started that, and then I had to learn more different building codes because we work in different states. California was one of the challenging ones, and they have a CASP certificate, which I got also from my first year. It's hard because it's very complicated. They had outdated language, and they add that to it in the building code. But eventually I mastered that, and I'm doing a lot of California, non-California, Denver, Colorado. New York, I went back to New York also to my area, and then I did some jobs there too. We start reviewing design, which is the best is to start from design into construction. This is the best how to do it for accessibility because it's costly to change it later. It's very important to catch things early. And it's doable. It's not always costly to make it accessible. A lot of things are small things, makes life, like people's life easier. You know, like it's just like starting with small ramp, small addition here and there, and that's it. It doesn't have to be really expensive. Because when you make it expensive, people don't do it. You try to make it as simple as they can do it, so they really can do it. And that's a problem in some building codes, like New York City and California, that they have over asking requirements sometimes that makes developers frustrated to not do it. You know, like all houses need to be like that, all apartments. It's hard. Other states, like they say, okay, all apartments need to be adaptable, easy way, like small things. 5% need to be more adaptable, more accessible, which is like type A units. And then that makes it more easy and more easy for people to choose their unit. You have to distribute it well, and that's it. You know, like you can do those stuff. You don't have to be too creative to make like people's life, you know, like more complicated than that. So, but here I am. I came here on vacation, but I was like, because I love accessibility, I was like, let me make my vacation during that time and to see my friends and to attend the event. So, and I met you guys. So.
Wonderful. Introduce yourself, Mark.
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, I've 26 years now in construction really since I left the UK. UK, I ended up surveyor basically, and then I moved into building control. Met my wife in Sydney in Australia for the last 14 years basically. Been what over there is called a certifier. And a certifier is someone who signs off buildings. They privatise the industry. So you have government and you have private industry also signing off buildings. So like high rises, hospitals, any building you can think of. The certifier is a person who signs off the occupation certificate. So having that sense, your hat is multiple hats. You have to do building control, you have to do environment, sustainability, you have to do fire, you have to do accessibility. So in Australia, from sort of 2010, to now, I sort of moved more into the accessibility side of things. And since I've come here, I've been working in both with the team here and applying the codes I know. Obviously, there's ADA code, there's the Australian code, there's English code, there's ISO code as well. So there's lots of different codes out there that you can turn to. And specifically, I suppose, here some of the codes are a bit outdated, as mentioned before. And sometimes the codes have evolved in other countries quicker than they have here. So you can look at other international codes and try and apply best practice to design. So yeah, my background is UK, Australia, now here, but with a focus on accessibility.
That's a very pragmatic approach to use the best of all the codes from all around the world. Is that practical, and is it easy to do?
It is, but you do get pushback from clients because they want to stick within their code, within their specific code. But then when you show them some of the other alternatives to show how it can improve their development, a good one is an Australian code for crossing the road, which we've discussed in Sweden. They have it as well. People with impaired vision use sound to travel. And obviously at road junctions, we have a development at the minute that's having allows electric cars to come into the mall, as an example in UAE. And obviously those electric cars don't make a lot of sound, and they've got a tramway in that shopping precinct as well. We're going to have all the wayfinding and the landscaping of the road and the pathways and the pavements. How are they going to hear cars, or how are they going to be able to find themselves to cross roads? So in Australia there's a standard there which is it uses sound. So when you press the button, you'll have obviously the tactile guidance for people with blindness. They can use the different types of tactileness. So you have like straight, oblong sort of shapes with round edges to go forward. And then when you want to change direction, they have the dots. And generally at bus stops and transport interchanges, you have that. So when they get to the road crossings, they find themselves to press the button. But how do you know to cross the road? So the sound that makes a sound. Yeah. So that's a way of alerting people, and that's some of the things. It was EMA, I think. Is that right, Anam? Is it EMA? It's EMA. Yeah. It's EMA. So yeah, we brought that in to say this is something you guys need to consider. How are you going to assist people that are coming to your new shopping centre in this area? That's, you know, it's the first time the shopping mall in UAE is going to have cars inside it. So it's trying to think about the safety of the people and the population that are coming in. All the people that want to come to that shopping centre, you're going to have obviously families. They're going to have a user experience where they're going to want to go, oh, we want to go back to this place, this is amazing. So if you know, I could ask everyone in the room who knows somebody with a form of disability, I'm sure everyone knows someone in this room. And that's one of the biggest things that we really need to get across in the built environment.
Best is like to use the technology for those items, because a lot of what happens even in the US, like they follow only the basics, the rules, and that's it, you know, like. And the problem that we face there, that there are a lot of elements that are available for help, like for people with vision impairments, but they don't allow you, like they don't replace the minimum required per code still, because they are not listed that are acceptable. Like let's say the ring, you know, like the ring, we use it a lot there for the ring bill, and it has like picture and video. They still require different type of ring, that wired or whatever, because they don't accept that as it's not written in the code. You know, like people get lost into details to not use the latest technology, but it's very helpful to have. It's developing a lot, and it's the tools are crazy, like what you have in the market that can help people. Like yesterday, not yet, 2 days before, during the Accessibility Expo, I saw like a step, like stairs, goes into ramp and moves up. That's amazing. Yeah. I was taking pictures and videos, and I want to show it to everybody, and I'm like, why not using those tools? You know, like it's helpful. Same as like detectable warnings replacement for them, because they have in US overuse, in California specifically, overuse of detectable warnings. They are everywhere. If you go to shopping malls, you'll see them spread like all the way. They lose the use of that. Like they lose the benefit of the detectable warning. Detectable warning should be hazard to safe, safe to hazard, to tell you like you're moving. So when you overuse it, you're confusing the person with vision impairment.
Absolutely.
So you have to have something digital, something more really like they have a lot of like different now techniques to detect that this is hazard, warning, sound, anything that can warn people, not only that. And that is not helpful for people with wheelchair. So you have to take into consideration everybody, you know, like that with disability, what they need the best and what to use the best for them. But latest technology should be more implemented and should be more accepted by the authorities, let's say.
But I think you need passive solutions, anything that can break with a sensor or requires electricity.
Aged people cannot use technology much. You know, like for my mom, I have to make it big letters, and then she cannot order Uber by herself. I have to order it from here. You know, like a lot of things we need to consider what they can do to, you know, like, and what is the targeted age and group, because a lot of disabled people are aged too. So you cannot rely on technology that much. Like only, let's say, drapery, yes, easy. You know, like they know how to push a button and that's it. But a lot of things like to go digital and go into like smart home, it's so hard for them. Yeah, and to choose, you know, you don't have to use everything. You just have to choose what's best for you, best use, and in the same time, laws help, like laws also control that a lot for us in US. Like they can allow it or not, or you have to double use. You know, like sometimes they don't use the technology because it's not replacement for the minimum requirements per code, so it's still like useless. And again, like aged people, like all these complicated stuff, it's not yet ready for everybody. Like maybe for my kids' generation, like for the kids, that's going to be easier for them, but not for like already aged people now. It's so hard to implement everything. Like the steps I saw was amazing. I was like small, you know, like push button, that's it, you raise, and that's it. And it solves a big problem, you know, like things like that are very important, and the shape is nice and everything is good.
And specifically, we touched on some points that were mentioned earlier by a couple of the gentlemen here, which is in Australia, got a lot of heritage buildings. And the conflict between building control and access is upgrading a building that's 100 years old, but it's got a heritage listing on it. So you have this conflict with the local government. They don't want you to do it because it's going to damage the heritage of the building, but you've got to do it because you need access to make it comply. So if they do any small amount of work in that building, as an example, the access to premises means it's called the I can't think of the name of it, but it's basically from the entry to the building to the point of work you're doing in that building, it's got to be upgraded to comply with access. So going on to your point with the lift, a lot of the developers sometimes, they will look at this because it's technically a way of getting people up the steps, this sort of ideas that you were just talking about at the expo. So there's all these different types of technologies out there that developers should be looking at. The retrofitting is a big problem because obviously buildings are like, they've got to comply. Yeah. But trying to get them to comply and get them to do it, they've got to find solutions that aren't really going to break the bank too badly, and the developers are going to go, oh, we can actually do that, we can implement that. That's not going to cost a load of money. The recurring message here is that it is about the long-term thinking and seeing the long-term value of having good accessibility. I think it's also not just good accessibility, it's also the governance, which we've touched on again. In Australia, as an example, when you're a certified and you're signing off a building, you're looking at the fire systems, doing tests with the New South Wales Fire Brigade, which is civil defence here, but you're also making sure that your eyes are looking at all the access stuff that complies. You've got to pull your tape measure out, you've got to measure the width of the staircase, the handrails, how they work, the handholds, the tactiles, the positioning of everything. You've got to have that eye. If you miss something and you sign a building off, someone has an injury, they're coming for your insurance. So applying the things here, when I look at that, and I look at buildings and the occupancy certificates that they need to get here, there's a certain criteria and all the information that needs to be provided to get that occupancy certificate. There's no access sign-off. That's one thing I see that's missing, that should be implemented here, and it's a governance perspective that should be put into place. But that's from experience and coming from another country and seeing here. Fire's requirement, it's required, it's mandatory. Access sign-off should be a mandatory requirement and legislated. So the problem in California that they keep updating it in every 2 years.
which is too much. Yeah. I mean, like, they must do it, but, you know, like, this is government work, so no one's going to do it. Like, it's more like any government is same government employees, same everything. So the problem that they keep adding to it or changing stuff and makes people's life miserable this way. Because, and especially they have divided the code into 11A, 11B. They complicated people more. That's between, like, residential and non-residential. It's just like they are doing their own. New York City, on the other hand, they were doing every, I think, 2014, and they did 2020. They did 6 years apart, which is decent, you know, amount of time. And they enhanced, they rewrote some sections. They had Appendix P, like, they had it complicated, that reference from here to here, from here to here, it started to be complicated. So they deleted, they had the courage to delete, and they rewrote it, which was fine. But always you have a gap of people how to apply it, and they need like 2 years to enforce those, which is fine too. But the federal rules are more outdated, like 2010, that's the latest they had, and 1983, I think, or 84, UFAS. That's a problem because they even didn't have exceptions at that time. Sometimes, like, you can open the door in if you have like specific clearance behind it. That was not allowed by that code. So if you follow that code, even it gives you some easiness and other items, it's harder on other items. So it's very mandatory, like, to keep updated, but not too much too, because you're complicating. Construction takes several years. It doesn't make sense that you're issuing new rules while people are making, even if it's not applies, it confuses people, it confuses designers, consultants, everybody. But we have the best, I think, rules in the US is the ANSI, ICC. It's also, I got the certificate in that. It's 2009, and plus they updated in 2017. They took into consideration the new sizes of the wheelchairs. They took into considerations the circle is not enough anymore. They knew now that scooters takes more space, what really people need, what they don't need to. They have the good exceptions. Every code they have commentary they issue it with, and it's easy to navigate. And the people in authority there are easy to reach as well, which is important for us as like consultants too, because sometimes you get like, what do they need here? So we call them and they are like, oh no, this one is fine, this one is okay, this one no, require this, or they explain. Even the ADA, the 2010, it's outdated, but they issued like guidelines more, and they issued like diagrams. Diagrams are very helpful in accessibility. It's very important. It's the whole thing. When we go to construction sites and we try to point out issues, different than design. Design, you're dealing with architects and design people that understand your language and the code. There, you're dealing with contractor who needs to know what to do in here. He doesn't want the language of the code. He doesn't want to hear about it. He want to know what to do now. So we clip pictures and we say like, this is minimum 18 inches, let's say. That's it. We don't try to explain. We put the reference for people or for us to get back to it, where we get it from, but you don't have to complicate it. As simple as they can follow it, you know? So updating the code is mandatory, but too much is killing too. That's right.
It's similar, I suppose, when I think about it. The Building Code of Australia was updated every year, then it changed every 3. And when they keep updating it, they make changes to it. They made a huge overhaul 2 years ago, which completely threw everyone in the industry because they changed all the chapter names and numbers slightly. So all the people that got experience were like, why did you do this? And all the young guys are like, you know, we've just come straight out of uni, this is what we know. So it's like, why did they have to do it to all the old people? But the standards, similar to here, we've got the code that we follow, KSA, UAE code, and then you've got the NFPA standards. In Australia, you've got the Australian standards, so they keep updating the standards rather than they keep referring back in the code to that standard. But yeah, I mean, there's a fair few points you've just touched on that seems extremely similar to me, for sure. But a lot of interpretation is where it comes down to. And another thing, there's a really good software called MyTools, which is an Australian gentleman I've actually met and had a chat with about a month ago. And what he's done is, a lot of the problems in Australia are not just accessibility. In construction, it's the construction quality. And what's happening is buildings that are being built for people, the construction quality is lacking. And it's feeding down, obviously, from the the tradies that come into site, when they come into site and they do something wrong, and it gets covered up, you don't find out until it's solved. Then you're trying to solve the problem. So visually, this tool is great because it educates the guys on site to what to do, how to do it correctly. Because they can learn off if you learn off the job, you generally hope you get it right, but you're relying on the tradesman that's teaching you. If you go to uni, you're looking at pictures, but then you've got to apply it on site. So
you use Build, it's from Autodesk.
I know there's that one.
Very helpful.
My tools is the one, but it's based off the Australian building code.
Oh. Okay.
So it goes to the chapters of the code, which are on the screen. So if you're on site, you can have your iPad there and go, how do I do this? How do I waterproof this area? How do I get this right? How do I get the door frames right, the door jambs, all these different little things that you wouldn't really think about when you're applying your tools, working off plans. You can go back to this. Flashings, window perps, getting things absolutely spot on. I'm going off a little bit into building control, but these elements are really good tools because you can go and look at a picture and you can talk to the building certified, which is what I used to do. Goes, here's how you should be doing it. This is wrong. I'm unsatisfactory inspection, and then you can send them the photos, and then you can send them the details. Say, here's how you get it right. It's got a part in there that's specifically set up for access, so it shows you horizontal and vertical transportation, lifts, lift buttons, position, heights, rails, toilets, toilet locations, the height of a pan, the height of a wash-hand basin. People that are ambulant perfectly okay don't think about people that have got some form of disability. If they go into a toilet, you'll notice the wash-hand basins are lower, the toilets are set up a certain way, the handrails are in there, you've got pull cords, you've got switches, you've got all these different things that need to be considered. And when you're signing off a building, these are all the things you have to look for as a surveyor. So applying all this, and I guess what I'm trying to say to everyone here is just go and look at what tools are available, because technology is changing that fast. There are tools there to use that you can actually use in your job every day if you're trying to help people with accessibility and understanding how it works.
I guess there's a lot of overlap between fire safety with egress and escape routes and with accessibility. How can you integrate the process of securing the compliance and the planning between these two disciplines?
From my experience in Australia, they used to be able to talk about getting people and getting the design right and getting people in the building, accessible-wise, but there was no thought about how do you get people out of a building that are disabled in a fire? Do you just leave them there? No. But what do we do about it? So this is one of the big things that's just about to come in. And working with the designers to say, you can't just design to comply. You've got to figure out how to get people out of the building in emergency situations. So what we'd work with in some of the bigger high-rises we did in Sydney specifically is we looked at areas that we could put people, because you can't use the lifts, obviously, you've got to use the fire isolated staircases to get out of the building. So we'd look at zones within the fire stairs that would be a safe area for them to sit at or be put in their wheelchair that would have a comms communication so they could sit in a safe place. It's a fire isolated stair. That's where the fire brigade are going to come up from, and that's where they've got communication with the fire control room as well. So they can actually radio through. So a lot of the big buildings have security. And also the fire stairs, we make sure the handrails aren't just, they comply with the access codes as well. So they've got the right grips, the right heights, the steps are right. Everything in those fire stairs complied with access as well, in and out.
I guess here in a city like Dubai, you're mentioning high-rises. There's no country in the world with as many high-rises as Dubai. That must be a challenge in talking about both fire safety and accessibility from the vertical and the horizontal.
Wayfinding's a big thing, for sure. But you ought to say to them, you want to make sure your stairs comply with the access code as on top of building code. The widths are right, the handrails are right. How to get people out in an emergency situation, what's required, and you should be advising them to go over and above code. I think the United Nations first brought their access code requirements, which was an international thing, in 2006. Then ISO, there's a current ISO. Australian standard first was 2006, and 2010 and 2021. The British standards have just changed. The newer UAE ones just come out. So they're constantly changing. So It's trying to keep up with that as well. Being in there all the time, you've got to keep on top of all these different codes. Especially we'll just go to Saudi Building Code or UAE code, but you've got these areas that you've got to look at. So going back to your point, in terms of sustainability and green, everyone's pushing this carbon neutral, carbon this, carbon that at the minute with a lot of the developments, but it's how do we get there?